He goes back to the Gideon headquarters and tells them what he's done. They're excited, but they say, you're on your own because we don't have funds to do this, but you're on your own. In March 1941, Charlie organizes a dedication service at the YMCA in Honolulu. There are 35 Navy and Army chaplains there. They have a dedication service. On Easter Sunday, 1941, every ship in Pearl Harbor has a Navy chaplain on it with a stack of Gideon Testaments to give out to the sailors. There were 4 or 5 ships that they didn't have chaplains for. And the local chief chaplain approved Charlie Peach and some Gideons to go on to Navy ships to conduct the services. And according to Navy historians, that was the first time in U.S. naval history in which non-Navy chaplains conducted religious services on Navy ships. There was another big distribution ceremony or distribution on Mother's Day in 1941. In the summer of 1941, the Gideons had the International Convention in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And Charlie spoke to the convention about what he had done. And a special offering was taken up to buy 40,000 more military testaments. And they were all shipped to Honolulu. And between July and October 1941, Navy chaplains throughout the Pacific Fleet handed out the military testaments to all the Navy personnel in the fleet. From October 1941 until December the 6th, 1941, Army chaplains gave them out at Army posts. There was a colonel named Bonneman who was interviewed by Mr. Henderson in 1995 who told him that on Corregidor on December the 6th, 1941, the chaplains there gave out testaments to all the Army personnel on Corregidor. Okay, you know what happened on December the 7th? Colonel Bonneman also told Mr. Henderson that there were 2,400 Americans killed at Pearl Harbor. And many of the young men whose bodies they fished out of the water at Pearl Harbor had the small military testaments in their shirt pockets. So that's what came about. How the Lord intervened and brought about the development of this little military testament. What's ironic about this to me is that this was designed by Charlie Peach and that junior Navy chaplain, designed to be just the right size to fit into the pocket of a sailor. And if you compare it to the different versions of the Gideon Testament today, it's still the same size. Nothing has really changed. The helps on the inside have changed. They've now added the Proverbs, but it's still the same size after all these years. Well, what happened during World War II? During World War II, the Gideons provided military testaments to 9,916,000 American military personnel. During World War II, while they're doing all this, they're printing them as fast as they can, but there was a situation in late 1943 where the Lord intervened again. In late 1943, Charlie Peach got a phone call in Honolulu from the National Publishing Company in Philadelphia. They were in a panic mode because the government had notified them that because of wartime shortages, they would no longer be getting any paper to print Bibles on and to print New Testaments. And they told Charlie that unless something is done, we're going to quit printing the Testaments in another 30 days. Charlie prayed about it, and then something came to his memory. About 1937 or 1938, he had used his political contacts in Honolulu to get zoning approval for Sears and Roebuck to build a department store in downtown Honolulu. And at that time, he had received a personal phone call requesting help from a man named Donald Nelson. Well, this same Donald Nelson in late 1943 was chairman of the War Production Board. And he had the authority to assign allocation standards So Charlie called him, explained the problem, and asked for a favor. Mr. Nelson told him, consider it done. Charlie got a phone call from the National Publishing Company a couple of weeks later and said, you won't believe this, but there's 2 boxcars been dropped off outside with nothing but Bible paper inside of them. So the Lord intervened again. Talking to Ray, Ray mentioned someone that he knows who has a military testament given out in World War II that has a bullet hole in it. Some young soldier had been carrying that testament on Utah Beach or somewhere. Which one?
Normandy.
Normandy, Normandy, and he got shot, and it saved his life more ways than one. My wife and I spent 4 days in Normandy about August 2006, 19 months ago. And we walked the beaches at Utah Beach, Omaha Beach, and Gold Beach, which was the British beach. We did not go down to the next 2 beaches, but we walked there. And behind each beach is a museum. Some of y'all might have been to those museums. In the Utah Beach Museum, there is a Gideon military testament on display with a little note card. It does not have a bullet hole in it. With a little note card that was dedicated by a soldier who had it with him when he landed at Utah Beach, who carried it with him throughout the European War. And then before he died, he wanted this Bible or Testament to come back to Utah Beach. It was just like this one right here. There's one more story from World War II that you may find interesting. It also involves this man named Steve Early I talked about earlier. On April the 12th, 1945, Harry Truman is taking a nap in his apartment in Washington, D.C. He's vice president. The phone rings. Steve Early is on the phone. Mr. Early says, Harry, you need to get over to the White House. There's some urgent news that you need to hear only there. So Harry Truman dresses and goes to the White House, walks in, Steve Early meets him and says, we have not released the news yet, but Mr. Roosevelt died a few hours ago in Warm Springs, Georgia, and you are now the president. And Mr. Truman said that he felt shocked. He felt like the whole world had come down on him. And Mr. Early said, how do you want to take the oath of office? And Harry said, well, I want the cabinet here, I want the leaders of Congress here, and as soon as you get them all here, I'll take the oath by the Chief Justice. So Mr. Early left and went and organized this. And what I'm telling you came from the book Truman by David McCullough, who was a Pulitzer Prize winning author, and also the authorized biography of President Truman. And all this is right in his book. When everybody is there in the catering room at the White House, the Chief Justice walks up and asks the President to raise his right hand, and Mr. Truman says, I'm taking no oath of office without a Bible. Where's the Bible at? Well, they didn't have a Bible in the cabinet room. So the meeting stops and they send the Secret Service out and the ushers to find a Bible in the White House. Mr. Roosevelt was an Episcopalian and may or may not have been a Christian, but he certainly didn't read the Bible and didn't go to church very often. One of the White House ushers came back to the cabinet room with a Bible just like this. In fact, the original Bible that Mr. Truman took his oath on the first time is on display at the Truman Museum in Independence, Missouri. I've seen it. It's just like this right here. So Mr. Truman lays his hand on a Gideon Bible and takes the oath of office on a Gideon Bible. And that night, Mr. Truman writes a note to his mother that Mr. McCullough refers to in his book. Mr. Truman says, what an unusual day. I wake up and then during the day I find out I'm president. And worst of all, I had to take the oath of office on a cheap Gideon Bible. Lord certainly does move in remarkable ways. And it amazed me that Mr. Early, who gave Charlie Peach a hard time, wound up having to see a president take the oath of office on a Gideon Bible. Well, there's one more, well, really two more stories from World War II that you may find interesting that relate back to the Gideon Testament. In 1949, General MacArthur, who had been appointed governor of Japan by President Truman after the surrender, he held that post until he was fired in 1951. As the military governor of Japan, he was responsible for rebuilding Japan and writing a new constitution and doing all these things. In 1949, General MacArthur sent a telegram to the Gideon headquarters asking them to send Gideon Bibles to Japan in the Japanese language.